I moved back to New York in like 95, and the plan was to finish writing my dissertation, and I had like $500 in an envelope, and I was like, it'll be fine. And so that didn't work out very well, just financially. I connected with some folks in Brooklyn who were doing web development and setting up, like it was still there was the internet, but there was like BBSs. So I was just getting, I was understanding and learning about the internet, and it was, it's a hackneyed phrase, but it was like the Wild West. Like it was just, what is this and how does it work? And like there are these protocols, and like what are we going to build on top of it, and how are we going to make things happen? And people saying like, can we do video? Like, I don't know, we can do these push images, and people, just figuring things out. And there was no manual. There was just people discussing the things and all that kind of stuff. J&R was like one of the go-to places for getting computers and that kind of stuff. And they would have these big full-page ads in the New York Times. I remember reading the New York Times, so like in paper, and like looking at it. And I knew about the Palm Pilot, but the Palm 7, I think it was, had come out. And it was bigger and it had an antenna. And I was just like, what the fuck is that? It's got a TCP/IP stack. And I immediately knew, I mean, something like clicked. I'm not saying like, aha, now I can see the iPhone future, but it's just kind of like, holy shit, you could have the internet in the palm of your hand as you're walking around. Just getting it even to be able to make a socket connection to a server someplace was just like a moment of just like, wow, okay, so something, this is very cool, because now not only is the internet out there, but it is with you wherever you go. And again, it was the kind of thing where it's just not really, it was exciting to be able to get a web page, just walking down the street, and you would just try it, just be like, can I get one here? And you just try bringing up something, and you could. And it was just a kind of phenomenal moment, which is incredibly geeky as I'm saying it. It's just like that thing where you know that there's something on the horizon. That just became, I guess for me, sort of became like mobile guy in my head. Like I wanted to find the interesting things to do with it. I can't remember exactly how that transitioned to then again. This is Internet 1.0. There was an incredible amount of relatively incredible amount of like kind of corporate largesse, so that if you were at a startup, they would inevitably start like a little R&D group to experiment and sort of probe, and sort of the more the agencies and the studios with a bit of foresight would recognize that we need to be able to provide the latest services for a client and these kinds of things. And a lot of that is unknown as to what it is now. So we need to stay on top of it. And there was also a lot of, particularly in the, well, I was involved mostly in I would be working at like agencies, which are typically kind of like marketing or ad agencies. So they're trying to develop new solutions for their clients. And a lot of that world was abuzz with location-based fill in the blank, whatever it might be, whether it's the kind of hackneyed sort of silly, like you can get a Starbucks coupon when you're nearby, because all those kinds of things were in the air as possibilities. And I just saw that, for me, both interested because I liked tricorders and Star Trek communicators, and then there was this thing as well as just like a fun space to kind of, I guess, hone my skills and sort of develop a very modest reputation. It's like, oh, he's the guy. Call him. He'll help you figure out like what to do and that kind of thing. And so that's what I ended up doing, professionally, just doing a lot of work focused mostly on mobile and mobile related development. I came back to academia after finishing my dissertation, moved to Los Angeles. Scott Fisher, who was setting up the interactive media department at USC, asked me to come on board to kind of set up a mobile lab. And he was also very much interested in kind of mobile development and those sorts of things. I proposed a workshop for UbiComp. I think it was in Tokyo. And the workshop was going to be, basically people sort of, describing, discussing, and thinking about ubiquitous computing and what we call like mobile pervasive, was it like mobile pervasive games? Because it was USC, and USC had a games focus. So what are the things that you can do? You got mobile devices, which at the time were maybe at best like a cell phone connected to a GPS, or a cell phone that also had location-based services, all pre-iPhone, all the the things that make this stuff trivial now. What can you do? How can you learn about how those technologies interact? And as a basis for learning, develop some kind of conceit for a game mechanic of some sort. And that just became like a fun way to kind of learn about it and sort of learn what the possibilities were. I'm not sure anyone had like a very concrete idea, except that we're going to experiment and we're going to study it, and we're going to try to involve some people from the from the, not just engineers, but also from people from the creative side of things to think about what might be interesting experiences that help us understand what a world would be like where computing is ubiquitous, things are maybe connected to sensors. Those sensors are, kind of real time aware about what's going on and able to share that, and all those kinds of things that kind of came together. They were earnest projects. They were projects that you didn't want to, kind of labor over or be overly precious about. It's like, look, let's just build something as best we can, and it might look ugly, but we're going to learn through the building of it, and we're going to learn about the experience by just kind of proposing something and seeing how quickly we can evolve and shape it and develop it. We call it Battleship Google Earth. So we used, I think it was like a GPS connected over a serial cable to a compact iPack with like some kind of like cell rig on it, and you would go around. Someone would build basically a battleship playboard in an environment like rather big. I remember we did one over in Venice, so it would take up like a fair number of blocks, and one person would go around with this kind of horrible rig and would have to walk to the spot where they wanted to drop the torpedo or whatever was in battleship. So things like that. And then you would see it reflected in Google Earth, like did they hit it or did they not? Which is, it's so and it starts pulling in a little bit of kind of proto AR stuff a little bit. Those are the kinds of experiments we would do. This is all like the sort of things you're describing where it's like, okay, basically the API is there, like the stack is there, you just need to know how to manipulate it. It was all kind of like people scratching their heads like, how are we going to do that? How are we going to get a map on a Palm Pilot? Like what's the best way to do it and those kinds of things. And I remember I was working kind of in this mobile group at Viacom, and I came across Vindigo. Do you remember Vindigo? Yeah. Vindigo was it was effectively Yelp for the Palm Pilot before Yelp, so before iPhones, before Google Maps, all this kind of stuff, and basically said, here's you list of restaurants and bars and that kind of thing, and which is cool enough because you kind of like, and you would every time you synced it in the cradle, it would update the information, that kind of stuff. So it wasn't quite real time, but it was real time enough. But the thing that I was just blown away by was like it gave you walking directions. So from where you were to where you needed to go to, it would tell you how to walk there. And that's the kind of thing, like now we take it for granted. But back then I was just like, the fuck did they do that? How did they get it in this little thing? And I remember talking to the guy, and it was the kind of thing where it was another one of those weak signals like, okay, now I'm starting to really, I'm getting what the possibilities are and how this evolves and develops. The things that were there aren't what we have now. So like access to all those kinds of things that right now you send an API call to Google and tell you how to walk or drive or bike or public transit and all that kind of stuff. But people wanted that. They were trying to figure it out and trying to figure out how to happen. That was that I don't know, it's just like a level of like grit and just kind of like determination and drive that I just found absolutely fascinating. Part of that kind of 1.0. Maybe it's wrong character. I can say this because I'm an engineer. That engineer sense of like, well, why shouldn't we? We can. So let's put these things in there, and they're getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And it's wouldn't it be cool to have all these things accessible? And I, as an engineer, I totally get that. You could almost draw a parallel to things we were talking about earlier. So VR, why not? Facebook, why not? Twitter, why not? Can't see any wrong with it. How could it go bad? And is it the same thing with with the mobile phones? Like, well, why wouldn't we put a camera in it? Like Nokia has an incredible kind of like intellectual portfolio of imaging systems. Like we own that stuff. Put it in there. Location based. While people are carrying it around, wouldn't that be helpful? Let people know where they're at. Open mics. Well, you can just offer a command and you'll get your order of Pampers or whatever. What's wrong with that? It's perfectly good. I can't see anything wrong with that. And then just wondering if there could be like this kind of now where we're at. I don't know what people are calling it 3.0 or whatever. Where now it's like people are saying like actually restraint isn't such a bad thing. Maybe just dial some of these things back. Maybe reconsider why we want these, and maybe that initial impulse to like throw everything in there was just like hubris. Like it's just, why would we ever stop?